The following episode was recorded March 23rd, 2022. Hello and welcome to Creating in Color, sharing the creative endeavors of people of color. I'm your host, Kaybe, and today I'm joined with Joey Clift, a writer for animation, as well as welcoming back Sadako Leong-Suzuki. How are you both today?
Hello. Hey, Kaybe. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Yeah, I'm doing good too. Just a normal day, other than recording a podcast.
Wait. I'm gonna change my answer. I'm doing terrible until we get a new deal for animation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the better answer. We're all fired up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Could be better.
Yeah, it could be better if I was paid fairly.
And that brings us to our topic today. There has been a lot of talk about the Animation Guild and New Deal for animation for a few months. I don't know, I don't have the specific number, but it's been a while. And I thought it would be helpful for some who may not be fully informed or know what all this means to have a discussion about it today. So thank you both so much for agreeing to discuss this.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Let's start simple. What is a union?
So a union is basically it's a collective of workers under kind of like a similar craft who are banding together to negotiate collectively for specific like rates, benefits, and things like that. Like unions are the reason that we have like a 5-day work week instead of a 7-day work week. Because those were just workers that kind of collectively banded together and said, "Hey, we should have days off." So that's kind of the long and short of what a union is.
How and why does the animation industry need to be unionized?
Well, we are currently unionized, at least in the United States, and just preface that today we're going to be talking about the animation industry within the United States, largely within California, right? We currently are unionized, and just like any other craft or job industry, we have specific wants and needs that are very specific to our work, right? Like what we need is very niche and different than say like plumbers or truckers, right? We're gonna face different issues and have different needs than any of those other industries, or even when you're talking about differences between like certain facets of live action, right? So that's why we have like our own little organized group so that we can talk about sort of our industry specifics.
I think that we're in a position specifically as animation workers where, not to make a hot take statement, but Hollywood has been kind of exploitive toward workers for as long as film cameras have been a thing. So, and that's the reason that we have, so many unions like the Screen Actors Guild, the Writers Guild, the various other IATSEs that cover like other crafts, the Directors Guild, the Producers Guild, etc. And, I think that the entertainment industry is very much, a money-making venture that's making some folks billions and billions of dollars. And, I think that we definitely are, or have been as an industry and really as just like a society in kind of an era of like labor exploitation where, our wages are either going down or staying the same while inflation is going up. We're, not seeing, like increased benefits or anything like that. And, meanwhile, our work is making, some folks in the entertainment industry, like I said, billions and billions of dollars.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that for myself at least, and I think a lot of, my peers, I think that it's important that we get like a fair shake, that, if we're creating a character that for a TV show that is then sold on a lunchbox and makes somebody $1 million in lunchbox sales or whatever, that's like messed up that like a character that we created kind of out of our mind and, collaborated with a lot of other people on, that we were not paid like very much for that. But meanwhile, somebody made $5 for every action figure sold or whatever. So, like there are a lot of unique issues with animation workers, but I think that it speaks to just a greater feeling in the entertainment industry of like somebody is profiting off of our work, and it really would be nice if it was us.
Yeah.
Right.
To jump back into it, like, so also on top of pay, it's like I think overall expectations for, especially in the animation industry, but also entertainment in general, the expectations have raised tremendously, right? Like they're expecting like really high budget products, but without giving ample time and money that it takes to fund those, right? They like there have been articles coming out recently that I will not name that talk about just like, oh, we're gonna do all this stuff for like less amount of time, or it's cheaper. Like that's something a lot of people say, especially for animation. It's like that our work is cheaper than some of our lovely live action counterparts, which is just not true. Especially again, if you want like high film quality stuff, but for like a really small budget, it's you're gonna have to have one or the other, and ideally still respect the workers anyway. Like even if you call it quote quote cheap.
Yeah, and I think that is a lot like part of the issue. I think for a lot of animation workers is I feel like because the Avatar reboot that's coming out, in the near future, recently announced they're going to have a budget of $15 million per episode. $15 million per episode. That show is largely a retelling of an animated series where I guarantee you the budget for each episode of that show was percentage points, barely like a sliver of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're in a situation, and I think that because we're paid less than I feel like a lot of other, specifically like live action is like a comparison that we make a lot. Like I think that our craft and our work is significantly less respected than those things. Like, I can only speak for myself as an animation writer, but like most live action shows are covered by what's called the Writers Guild, which is sort of the union covering all writers in the entertainment industry, or most writers in the entertainment industry. And the Animation Guild covers, most animated shows. There are a few animated shows that have negotiated for, WGA rates, most notably like The Simpsons, I think Rick and Morty, and a few other shows. And, I'm really happy for them for being able to negotiate for like great live action rates for that. But as people in the Animation Guild working on animated shows, which covers most animation writers, we make, I think, like it's like 40% of live action writers, for a week rate. We make zero residuals as compared to live action WGA writers,
Oh
which
wow.
means that like if an episode of a show is re-aired, if you're in the WGA, you receive like an additional fee for the licensing fee to air that episode. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
in the Animation Guild, we don't receive any of those benefits. Our freelance script rates are significantly lower. We also, because animation tends to take longer than live action, oftentimes instead of having seasons of a show ordered, we'll have like a chunk of episodes ordered. So, we'll get 40 episodes or 100 episodes or whatever of a show ordered, and like that'll be considered one season. But then when it comes out on a streaming service, for example, it might be broken up into 6 seasons or 7 seasons or 3 seasons or whatever. But because like we only negotiated it as like a an episode dump rate, we don't necessarily have the ability to like negotiate for pay increases, title increases, or anything like that allows us to like progress in our career that folks in like the live action industry are like. I'm sure if you're like working on a live action show, you're going to negotiate probably some level of pay bump from season to season on a show. Whereas for us, we're not able to do that because everything is kind of lumped together as one thing. And it also like kind of causes us to stagnate in our careers. Like if you're writing on a show covered by the WGA, from season to season, it's written into your contract that you'll get like a title bump. You'll go from staff writer, which is entry level, to like co-story editor to story editor to co-producer to producer, etc. That allows you to like then transfer those titles onto future shows. So like it's established that your floor for what you're paid is like this rate. Whereas because in the Animation Guild, like oftentimes, if we get 100 episodes ordered of a show, and that's like considered one season, and then that turns into 5 seasons when it's released, that puts us in a situation where like the network is just like, well, 5 seasons of it came out, the series is canceled, like, or we'll call that the end of the series, which makes it so that we don't have the same abilities to like negotiate for those like title bumps or rate bumps. So because of that, we're like often stuck at like the lowest level for like a long time. And then there's also a lot of stuff that's just like, kind of born in, I would say like misogyny and bad labor practices from like 50, 60 years ago. Like color designers in animation are paid significantly less than even just like other crafts within the animation guild. And
Mm-hmm.
part of that is that like, in the 50s or the 60s or whatever, it was just like thought of as like quote unquote women's work,
Mm-hmm.
when it's like due to, the gender pay gap, it's like they thought it was okay
They were literally called the Ink and Paint Girls back at
Yeah.
Disney back in the days. Like that was the whole title, was Ink and Paint Girls. It wasn't like Ink and Paint People. It was always just, oh, the girls can color everything in, which is, I'm not gonna even
Yeah.
think we can all.
Yeah, I learned I didn't know that until honestly a lot of these campaigns came out, like specifically color designers speaking out. Like I'm in the animation guild as a writer, but I'm not necessarily an expert on all other aspects of the union. But yeah, like learning that, it's like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
you look at
In
that
short.
and it's like, oh, that was horrible 1960s Mad Men
Yeah.
era misogyny
Yeah.
is why my friends make like
Yes.
like significantly less than other people, even though they're amazing and talented
Yeah.
artists,
And sometimes asked to, like, we can, I don't know if we want to segment this into like different parts about the hashtags, but like just like they're asked to do sometimes the same amount of work as like other design crafts and still paid significantly lower. And it's just it makes no sense. It really doesn't.
Yeah, I remember speaking with a color stylist some years ago, because originally I had an interest in being a color stylist, and I showed her my work, and she said, "Your work is amazing. Don't apply for this career. Do not try to do this because you will be stuck." Like, she tried becoming a character designer, and she was flat out denied, saying, "Oh, but you only do color." But she had like wonderful design work, but that's all they saw her as.
That sucks. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird industry, and like I feel like specifically in animation there are so many like just like weird things like that like it really feels like it's just like exploiting our labor. And like what really burns me up about this is that like I moved to Los Angeles like 12 years ago with like a dream to like write funny stuff for the screen. And I've dedicated a very big portion of my life to doing that. And I feel like the studios basically take our passion and the idea that this is our dream job that we've worked for so long for, and use that as like an excuse to pay us less because like it's your dream job, So like that's something that like really burns me up about all of this, is I feel like our passion and joy in like what we're doing is directly used as an excuse to pay us less while
Exactly.
somebody's making billions of dollars
Yeah.
off of the work we're doing.
Is it like, oh, you're being paid in exposure type of
Oh
logic?
God.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sometimes.
it's like the whole like, and this is why I think many of us went into this, right? Is that we really wanted to do as a child, I really lived by this, but I think especially as I grew older, I've come to unfortunately kind of really hate this phrase, right? It's like if you do what you love for your job, you never work a day in your life, like that phrase or something like that. I was like, oh, I never want to be one of those really boring business people. No shade to people who love business, but like I never wanted to be that person. And I was like, oh, art is fun, and they get to create things and inspire people and draw. And then, but to say that just because you do what you love, that you don't work a day in your life, that's totally untrue. There are things that every craft is asked to do that is not really what I want to do. One, two, also if you're asked to do that so often, like to do something for fun and for yourself and for your own creative sort of like exploration, that's one thing. But to be asked to do that with so many changes and like if I'm doing this for myself, I'm not going to work myself like 12 hours. There are definitely some people who do for fun, but that's not a lot of people. Also, if you calculate in like folks that are like have families, whether it's children or people they're caring for, or if they have mental or physical disabilities that like make that hard, like there's no way that you can be like, yeah, work 12 hours, you love it, right? Like at some point it is working every day of your life. That phrase just doesn't ring true. It's I am working. You can't tell me that just because I love my job that I'm not working.
But when I think that this is something that I've started to think about a lot of this stuff as recently is like I love telling stories and I love that I get to do this job. But I am also like very aware that like myself and a lot of my friends have like sort of, without necessarily putting our foot down, kind of made the decisions made for us of like, oh yeah, I'm probably never gonna like have a family. I'm probably never gonna own
Mm,
a house. Like I'm
yeah.
probably there, I'm probably never going to have like a 401k. Like, so these are like real sacrifices
Hmm.
that like we're making because this is an industry that like you have to be so all in on. And especially like coming, I mean, like as like POCs, like I'm Native American and Rural Cowlitz, and like I think that we have to work 5 times as hard to get 10% of the opportunities. So it's I feel like for a lot of us, it's like it is this feeling of, oh, I'm going into this career and being in it as deep as I am. Like I am specifically pushing back like major life milestones or just giving up on life milestones so that I can do this career that I love.
Hmm.
That's like to me that's one of the reasons that we should be paid fairly for our work. Like
Yeah. It should be easier to just live
yeah,
working in animation.
yeah, because I mean like the Animation Guild, I know that there is some efforts to like branch out to other like I know we just unionized Titmouse to New York, which is an animation studio based in New York. There is some efforts to like, spread the wings of the union, but it's still largely like a SoCal based, like LA local union. So like
Hmm.
we to work in this industry have to live in one of the most expensive cities in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
for me, I'm working now. I'm working now on a show. I've been on a show for a little while, but I still like have to have a roommate to be able to afford to pay my rent, like, and that's like while I'm working.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I feel like at this point, similar to what the all the things that you were saying earlier, Joey. Like I think most people I know also have just like given up on like personally I don't even know if I really want children, but like I just don't even factor that in. I'm like
Yeah.
I especially like especially certain crafts like I've no joke I've heard this is just like a little taste to just kind of just color it. I knew a classmate of mine that when I was still in uni who was told, "Oh, you want to go into boarding?" And she was a girl, she's a woman, right? Oh, well, just consider that because like if you're a woman and you don't want to have children, and I'm like, even if I even like, regardless of like, I want even to have the choice to have children. I don't even know if I want to, but like, I know so many friends and people who do want children, but if they, especially like board artists, especially, are extremely overworked to like some of like I know lots of people, way too many people who have been worked to the point of being hospitalized. It's like I don't even want to consider if you had to be hospitalized and had children or whatnot. And it's just like I feel like historically, if you wanted to be in these careers, you would have to have a partner to help with those things, to help have children, to help subsidize, to afford a house, right? And like we have to make these weird sacrifices that for many people are just like are exciting large life choices just because we want to do what we love, and I don't think that's a sacrifice we should have to make.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, like I have friends in my hometown who like work as like window installation people that like make good money, own houses, have families and kids, and can like take 4 vacations a year. So it's like, but
Whoa.
that's just something that like, we're like so overworked
Yeah.
in the entertainment industry and specifically the animation industry, and it's like so hard to like get your foot, like it took me 10 years of like pretty much like focused both feet in work to like even get my first like staff writing job, and that's like a decade of my life. And it's like and once again, I say this a lot, but like the work that we're doing is making somebody billions of
Yeah.
dollars. I
Mm.
think I want to say like I forget the exact number, but it's like I think streaming services pulled in like $18 billion worth of revenue last year. The CEOs of some of these companies are making $50 million a year. Like I think like SpongeBob, I think, has pulled in $3 billion of just merchandising revenue in the time that SpongeBob has been on the air. Um, and like the CEOs of these companies are seeing record profits. They're getting tens of millions of dollars in raises for doing a good job. Meanwhile, when you
Mhm.
factor in agent, manager, and lawyer fees, like an animation writer is only making like a little over $18 an hour to write a freelance script of these shows. That's like that episode and those characters we're creating are like leading to shows like
Right.
SpongeBob making $3 billion. So
Right.
it's like, so I mean, like for me, it's like we're working so hard and making people so much money, and like we just want to be treated fairly.
Yeah.
Like,
Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just to be treated like humans instead of machines,
right.
which I'm
and
sure they would love if we could just be machines. They would, but we're
and
Mm.
not.
and like I said earlier, not to keep on bringing up like live action writing rates versus animation writing rates, because I'm just a writer, so that's just what I know best. But a showrunner, which is the highest possible position for an animated show, is making less per week than an entry level live action TV writer.
What? Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
god. Are you
yeah.
kidding?
It's like, yeah. So like the person who created the
Mhm.
show in animation and like makes all of the high level decisions is making less than like an entry level
Right.
first day as a live action WGA staff writer rate. That's like
That's
real,
some
and that
bullshit.
Yeah.
sucks. Yeah, that's like bullshit. So it's like
And
so it's like we
yeah.
literally have like literally like you look at showrunner rates for live action shows and showrunner rates for animation shows, staff writer rates for live action shows and staff writer rates for animated shows. And it's like, this is the same job. This is
Mm-hmm.
like, and like, I'm sure like, like animation directors are doing the same job as live
Oh, I
action
know.
directors.
I know
Like,
there's a whole, like, I don't know the whole nitty gritty, but I've definitely talked to directors who are like, why aren't we like given the same things as the directors union, right? Or like they're definitely like, there's disparities there where it's like we are like, obviously there are some differences. I think more differences between directing for animation than there is live action, but still like that it's not an excuse to underpay. I think that's just generally overall, it's like there's no excuse to underpay, even if there are differences between even if there are differences between what we're doing. Effectively, the quality and the point, which is to entertain, inspire, and
yeah,
especially in I hate, especially in these hard times, quote quote, the pandemic, which I'm sure especially the streaming services have seen a high raise of viewership,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like at the end of the day, we're also making things to entertain and help people. So why are we treated as less in
but I,
general? Like it makes no sense. And
when,
just to throw out there the whole that we were, it was like the top 7 movies out this year that were the most watched for all animated. Like then why don't we see any of that money, or we
Right.
see so
yeah,
little of it?
I like comparing writing because it's so apples to apples,
Right.
but it's like a WG or an animation guild rate for a feature script is like, I'm going to butcher these numbers, but it's like $12,000 or whatever for a feature script for an animated movie. A feature script for a live action movie under WGA rates is like $150,000. So like this is the same. It's like it's and like I know I'm throwing big numbers around, but like that $12,000 to write a movie, that's like 6 months worth of work. Like,
Right.
so
Right.
it's like if you think about it in those terms, like if somebody just gave you a check for $12,000, then like, yeah, like that's a lot of money. But like if somebody said, okay, this $12,000 has to last you for 6 months,
Right.
that like all of a sudden becomes way less money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like I think that all I want is for like us to receive like the same, and like not just writers, just all the crafts, the same like respect, rates, pay, benefits as like our live action counterparts. Because at the end of the day, like it's all stories, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is this basically what the New Deal is?
So the New Deal, which again, just so for viewers to know, there's a certain amount of things that we cannot discuss because we are currently in negotiations for our New Deal. No, sorry, our New Deal.
Mm-hmm.
Just quick preface is that about every 3 years, the different unions under the IA or the IATSE, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, all the different locals kind of negotiate in their own ways about every 3 years. Ours is separate from the larger IA. Our contract is separate. So we are currently in negotiations talking about that. And because of that, we can't go nitty gritty really into
Right.
that depth. But effectively, because we have so many things that we're pushing for, we are taking this time to really shed light on the different crafts and different areas of animation and our struggles, right? Like obviously like Joey's talked a lot about like the writers and how they're really, you guys really need parity with the WGA rates. And
Mm-hmm.
also like I know I've heard, you could probably speak way more to this than I ever could, but like I know that like even issues where like whole teams are staffing mostly like freelance instead of properly, bringing in staff writers, right? Which is means that those writers are getting paid significantly less and with less benefits. And then also like on storycraft, right? Like, which is anybody, like, so that's revisionists, board artists, and directors, right? There's just a whole slew of issues where we're asked to do way too many jobs than what is really in our job description. I mean, I could go into that in depth. Like an example is that like we've effectively taken part of the layout department, which was effectively a job where between boarding and animating, where an artist would take those boards and make sure that the composition of shots works using those effective assets and really helps problem solve a lot of things. But we've effectively been asked to do that job, which adds without swearing too much, a boatload of additional work.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And with again basically not giving enough time to do those things. And we've talked about equal pay for equal paint, which is what we were talking about the color designers earlier. So again, one of their crafts that has been staffed with a large amount of our most marginalized folks historically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how those struggles are being like a largely female and people of color job, right? Like what does that look like and what does that mean? And just at length talking about also like New Deal for animation, which is referring to like side letter N. And that's less craft specific, but that is largely affecting our whole industry of animation.
The side letter N is when streaming services first started, in kind of starting in earnest in like 2008 or whatever. They negotiated with the different unions this thing called side letter N, which basically says streaming services are kind of a gamble. We don't necessarily know how they're going to like pay off. So, in 2008, we're going to produce a bunch of shows and make a bunch of content, but we're asking that you go like a little bit below your like union minimum that was negotiated as the minimum for that job, because with the idea that this is kind of a gamble and we're not necessarily sure if it's going to pay off or not. So it's sort of a like, hey, trust us, work with us on this. We'll get a bunch of stuff made. We'll get a bunch of people employed. They'll just be paid like a little bit less than they do on, cable shows or whatever. And so, this was a deal that we signed in 2008. And then fast forward to 2022, and streaming services are not a gamble. They are some of the most profitable companies in the world. Like I said, streaming services made $18 billion like last year, but we're still being paid as if it was a
Right.
gamble. Side letter
Right.
N is
Mm-hmm.
still a thing. So that's like part of it too, is like so many of our jobs are on streaming services that are like paying us under this archaic deal that we made 14 years ago or whatever. And we're basically saying like, hey, it's not a gamble. You're all very rich. Pay us just like our normal rate.
Normal
Like,
rates. So yeah, that's largely what this new deal is we are in negotiations for a new contract, and without going into it, we're just like, trying to shed light on how our industry and different aspects are affected so that we can, you know, help educate the public, help unite, I think, our, you know, our community. Like Joe, you were saying that you, like, until we were, you know, a lot of these hashtags, like the equal paint one was going around, you didn't know that much about the struggles of color designers. I only knew of it because I like watched a YouTube video once. Like I learned so much more from our own hashtags, from people that I could effectively talk to. Like I learned more about writers, and I think so just as like a unifying sort of way for a community to talk, right, and be open about the state of our industry. Because like I think for a large part we tend to, you know, because like we work for like these happy colorful shows and all, honestly, some really exciting and like projects, and we are, I think, I don't know, I think a lot of people, including myself, we are excited for the projects that we're working for. We want to be grateful for what we're working for, but that doesn't mean that we can't talk about what the issues are, because not everything is perfect. It's far from perfect, and we need to be able to talk about that and also let people know.
We're really proud of the shows that we're working on and the stories that we're able to tell and the work that we're putting out there. But it's also able to believe that we're artists and creatives who've spent a large portion of our life honing this very specific skill set, and that has value, you
Yes.
know, like, and that has value, you know, in terms of the ability to tell good stories or whatever, but also that has like money value. Like
Yeah, it
if you
literally has value.
like if you're you know, like if you are hiring somebody to build like a bookcase for you, like you're probably going to want somebody who's built a bookcase before, maybe somebody who's built 1,000 bookcases before, and you probably pay that person more than somebody who's never built a bookcase before in their life. So, you know, I think that yeah, like we can't necessarily go into like, you know, specifics of the thing, but I think that like the goal of a lot of what we're here to talk about is like, you know, the greater social media campaign awareness of like what our struggles are. And I think that what we're, you know, what my hope is, and I'm, you know, not on the negotiation committee, I don't know the details, but so I can't speak to specifics, but it's like, to me, it's like the goal of this is to like rectify the wrong of our treatment, you know, and I think and something that is, you know, not to make this be entirely like doom and gloom, but something that has been, I think, really beautiful about this process over, you know, this current cycle of negotiations and et cetera, is um, I feel like we're all talking about our treatment in a way that we didn't for decades because we were like embarrassed about it. And I think that that's not only educating ourselves and each other about, you know, like the plight of, you know, people in storycraft, animation, you know, production workers, color designers, and et cetera, but like we're also educating, I think, other people in the entertainment industry. I've had a lot of like live action people who I'm friends with, or you know, who are mutual Twitter follows with me, reach out to me and say like, "Wow, I had no idea. I just assumed that like if you wrote on a TV show, you got paid a TV show writer money, you know, like
You
a
would
live action
think.
writer money or whatever." And I was like, "Yes, that would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it?"
In a
You
world
know,
with morals and sense, it would make
um,
sense.
a- and I think that something that has me very hopeful is that like something I'm hearing from people that have been in the entertainment industry and specifically in the animation guild for decades are telling me that this is as fired up as they have ever seen the union.
Yeah.
Like we had, you know, like we're our hashtags. You know, you mentioned equal pay for equal paint. I think Storycraft Unite, Pay Animation Writers, you know, a New Deal for Animation have all been like in the top trends on Twitter over the past several months. Like there have been a ton of news articles. It's made international news. Like our fight. I'm seeing so many great, you know, people in the animation industry and also allies of ours that are, you know, putting out great work on Twitter. Really like you know, creating great, you know, YouTube videos explaining to people what this is and what we're fighting for. And you know, I mean, we had like our first in-person animation guild rally in in like probably over 40 years,
Yeah.
as far as anybody can remember, decades and decades, just last weekend. And 1,000 people showed up on a Sunday in a parking lot in Burbank to like have their voices be heard. And these were like largely animation workers who were finally feeling empowered to speak up about like how we've been exploited as a craft for, you know, since the 60s or whatever, you know.
Mhm.
So that to me is really cool. Is I feel like we're all in this fight together, you know,
Yeah.
and that's I think that there's a lot of power in that.
1,000 people just to show up and support each other, right? Like, I think also just it was so invigorating as a community to be able to see each other, especially after this whole pandemic, right? Of
Right.
not being able to see one another, you get so isolated so easily. But just a reminder, right? And that wasn't even, we also had folks that drove in and drove out. We weren't able to get full numbers on those. So to like just so many people. Anyway, that was
Yeah, but I think that's like part of, not to go get into this too much, but I think that's part of our frustration too. Is like animation is the only pandemic-proof side of the entertainment industry.
Right.
yeah.
So like through like live action shows have had to shut down due to the global pandemic that we're all going through. As recently as last month due to Omicron. And animation, at no point have I seen any break or stoppage in work due to this catastrophic global event that we're going to. I've just been expected to work through.
I think
And
we like stopped for maybe a week at most.
No,
Was
right.
seemed to be
Because no
like
one
the
had
consensus.
equipment.
Yeah, and that was it.
yeah,
It was a week, maybe more like maybe half a week. A week is
yes.
about as much stoppage as we got.
So it's like we're legit keeping the industry from
Yeah.
collapsing.
Yes.
So like pay us fairly,
Yes.
just pay us, just give us money.
I wanted to ask you, because we already kind of went over the four of the hashtags: New Deal, Equal Pay for Equal Paint, Pay Animation Writers, Storycraft Unite. I want to also ask you about Production Strong. Do you mind going into detail about what that is exactly?
So production strong in terms of like the hashtag, it's largely been a movement to again sort of share the struggles of our production workers in animation. And I think in terms of time wise, why it's so prevalent is they're not unionized. Most like our production workers are not unionized. They are not part of tag with us, but so they're not technically part of our negotiation cycle. I just want to make that clear. They're technically not part of this negotiation cycle. But time wise, why it's coming up or it is relevant now is that we are having production folks trying to unionize. So that includes Titmouse New York, when they submitted, I believe, to join our union, they included the production workers as part of the employees covered. Recently, Titmouse LA also submitted to join our union. Also, the production folks on Solar Opposites and Rick and Morty also submitted to try to join our union. And so, since there's so many crews trying to unionize, that's a huge reason to talk about it and talk about, well, production is strong, right? Like as an industry, we cannot survive without our production workers. Like literally they do so much for us. They're like, they set up meetings, they help organize all of our messy artist brains. They help, send things to and from our overseas studios. That without production folks doing the hard work they're doing, we could not operate. And so they should be respected and paid as such. And also, just to touch on it, go to just any studio, the population of production are going to be probably the most diverse folks, to be honest. Like some of our most marginalized communities will be in our production workers.
Like, say it louder for the people in the back.
Like
Yeah.
like a large amount of them are basically not men. Our POC are also paid pennies in comparison to us in the creative crafts. Like when I made the jump from coordinator to revisionist, it was not quite double my pay, but it was a significant upgrade. And because they're like our front runners for a lot of things, they also tend to be the scapegoats for a lot of people. So with all of these sort of like aspects combined, I think that's why we're talking about production. That's why we need to protect and respect production and help them unionize. And I would love for them to join us. Or even as far as the talks are right now, I totally support them joining us if they ever decided they wanted to join their own. That's a whole different conversation. I just want them to be unionized.
Yeah, like I think that with production workers, especially in animation, I always like to think of like the apples to apples comparison of like what it is kind of in the live action space.
Mm.
And like a script coordinator, for example, in animation, in a script coordinator in live action is like a specific job in live action. There's also writers assistants, writers PAs, showrunners assistants, and other like there's like 4 or 5 different jobs that kind of fit like those different ways to like be production workers on a production. And a lot of those folks on the live action side are in a union. I forget which union it is, but it's like they get, health, dental benefits and stuff like that. Whereas in animation, and this is like I think a theme that's very common in animation, all of those jobs have been like collapsed into one role, and it's the same amount of work as
Yep.
4 jobs,
Yep.
but they're paid, not
What?
what you would get for 4 jobs to do. They're paid for one job, credited for one job, and because they're not afforded the same, unions as people, live action people in similar positions,
Right.
they don't get like health, dental benefits or anything like that. So it's like you're literally seeing people just like working for other TV shows that just happen to be live action, doing the exact same job,
Yeah.
getting like greater pay and greater benefits, and just benefits, period, than somebody that's like doing the exact same job, but they just happen to be doing it for an animated show, so they get nothing,
Right.
Upsetting.
Yeah. It's,
Also, just they're like are the newest members, which would normally be production assistants, right? Those are usually the folks that are paid as close to minimum wage as you possibly could get. And this is not me like throwing shade at minimum wage workers at all, but production assistant is not a minimum wage job in my opinion. Also, there's just such a huge disparity, like I don't know, inconsistency is maybe a word I'd use in terms of like show to show, studio to studio, what the sort of responsibilities are. Like there's obviously going to be like overlap for the most part, but like part of having a union, right, is that you can kind of like boil down to an essence like what a job title is in theory, right? Like you can really define what that is so that you can charge and respect that job title accurately. In production, I feel like there can be such a huge disparity in like what that really means.
Yeah.
And because there's nothing to really unify like what makes this worker this like PA at like Warner Brothers versus like Disney or something. Like also, obviously, if I didn't have to explain it, this is not me specifically throwing any shade. These are just like random examples that don't mean anything. But like there's no consistency. And I think if they were unionized, they could at least be consistent in terms of like what those job titles are and what those requirements are, right? And they don't have that.
Right. Oh, go ahead, Joey.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Wait, can I swear on this podcast?
Go nuts.
Yeah, shit be fucked. I added a lot.
The podcast.
Yeah, a real punctuation point to that statement. I did.
You know what? I think that's a good note to end our conversation for now, actually. So thank you both for taking the time to discuss the New Deal for Animation, and thank you for all the hard work that you and also the other union members are doing to push and help to create better working environments, pay, and benefits for everyone who is working and loves this industry. Do you mind sharing the socials for the Animation Guild?
Yes. As far as I know, the Animation Guild mostly works off of their Twitter and Instagram, if we're talking about, again, social medias. So on either, you can look up the Animation Guild.
Yep. It's
yes, Animation Guild.
And then and there's also if you want to follow craft specific Twitter accounts, there's also @tagwriters, @colordesign839, and @tagstory_group. Something that if you're listening to this and you're fired up about this and you're trying to think of things that you can do to help, I think that the biggest thing that we need from you listeners is just like being vocal about our struggle. Follow these Twitter accounts, like these tweets, retweet things. Like if you have friends who are big fans of animation, like tell them about how like the workers who make the shows that you love aren't being treated great, and we're currently fighting very hard to hopefully be treated better. And we need everybody's support to make that happen. Like, it means something when hashtag New Deal for Animation is the #1 trend in California. It means something when Storycraft Unite is the #2 Twitter trend in the entire United States. And that's like through, all of y'all tweeting about it and retweeting it and, using these hashtags and, getting educated on our fight. And like, we're negotiating with some of the most profitable companies in the world to try to get a fair shake. And the only way that we're going to be successful is with your help. So
Yes.
Please help us get the word out.
Please keep tweeting about us to talk about your favorite shows. We also have a petition, which we can provide a link in the description for. I think currently, last time I checked, we had about at least 15K people signing that, just like as a way to show numbers. But again, like Joey was saying, I think keeping those hashtags trending is great. The news outlets are seeing it, and letting the studios know that they can't just walk over animation workers. There are fans and other allies there who have our back.
Yeah.
Well said. Thank you both so much. And thank you, the listener, for tuning in. Please follow Creating in Color on Instagram and Twitter, and feel free to submit any questions for upcoming guests through our social media or creatingincolorcast@gmail.com. If you're interested in following me, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and twitch.tv at Maybe It's Kaybe. Thanks to Namikaze for creating the ending theme. You can find more of his music on his SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Namikaze. That's NAMIKAZE. Thanks to everyone sharing Creating in Color with their friends, family, and coworkers. We really appreciate any word of mouth or helping to push a hashtag on social media, #CreatingInColorcast. If you're interested in donating and joining our donors list, you can make a one-time or monthly donation through our PayPal or our Ko-fi account, ko-fi.com/creatingincolor, or even purchasing Creating in Color merch on Star Rain Studio on Etsy. Links available via our Linktree. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been Creating in Color. Keep striving, keep trying, keep creating.